Thank you all for coming to this lecture venue at the Normal University. Let me introduce myself first. I'm Yang Kongrong from the Normal University's College of International Studies and Overseas Chinese Education. I heard 2 days ago at National Taiwan University, when the first lecture was held, it was packed. I think today is also very rare. A session has also been arranged coming to the Normal University. To be able to have such high-level cultural exchange and Buddhist exchange, I think is a quite rare opportunity. I'll leave the time to Khenpo for his teaching. Now, would everyone please stand to welcome Khenpo to the stage for his teaching? Everyone, please applaud.
Did you understand? I said, good morning, everyone. Today, once again with everyone, here at National Taiwan Normal University with teachers and some students and also colleagues from other research institutes together. Let's all chat together. That's how I see it. In this process, I think many people want to understand Tibetan culture, Tibetan Buddhist knowledge, because nowadays, Tibetan culture has become treated as a kind of luxury item. Many people feel it's very mysterious, sensing some charm within it. So I'm thinking the school also requested that I speak on characteristics of Tibetan culture. The topic, characteristics of Tibetan culture, has very deep and vast meaning. Perhaps in our brief time, and they also requested about 50 plus minutes to finish speaking, saying it this way, I may not be able to speak much, but I'd like to chat with everyone about my perspective and my thoughts. Indeed, as early as 20 years ago, I came to Taiwan. At National Taiwan University the day before yesterday, I said 18 years. Actually, that was when going to Singapore. It was 18 years ago. Coming here should be 20 years ago. By another calculation, it's been 21 years. At that time, I also understood Taiwan. Taiwan's faith is quite good. Here, including many like Dudjom Rinpoche, Penor Rinpoche, Dodrupchen, as well as Tibetan Buddhism's very remarkable great masters, also in the 1970s and 80s started propagating the Dharma in various higher education institutions, government organizations, and different industries. Recognition of Buddhism, faith, compared with other places, there's a certain gap. So at that time, I very much admired it. After coming here, I felt Taiwan's people are very blessed. Whether children, intellectuals, or elderly people, each person takes this kind of faith as their own most important life experience to treat. This also is, for me as an ordinary monk of Tibetan Buddhism, from the bottom of my heart, rejoicing and delighting. Until today, I believe everyone is also very familiar with Tibetan Buddhism, Tibetan culture. Therefore, here, I also don't necessarily especially need to elaborate. If elaborating in such brief time, it's also impossible to finish speaking, to exhaust. It has all-encompassing, can be said to be richly varied meanings. Therefore, using simple language to summarize has considerable difficulty. But today, there should be several aspects to share with everyone. First, Tibetan culture. Actually, it has a kind of pluralism, because at that time, it absorbed from Han regions, Nepal, including Iran, and surrounding countries, some different cultures. So from current Tibetan culture's literature, one can discover the scope it covers is very broad. In this world now, there are many ethnic cultures existing. We can research their cultures. In this process, if you have interest, you can walk into true Tibet, then understand from a positive perspective under what kind of historical conditions and environment it has survived until today. And until today, in the whole world, in an era of such advanced technology, it has such vitality and vivacity. This point is worth our reflection. So I'm thinking this kind of pluralistic culture, actually our Tibetan culture. The so-called culture in Tibetan is zhpa. Now, many people translate it as science. The 5 major sciences, 5 minor sciences. For example, the 5 major sciences include the science of medicine and also the science of logic. Logic refers to epistemology. Also, inner science. Inner science is what's now called Buddhist studies. Also, linguistic studies called grammar. And also others, for example, the 5 minor sciences, including poetry, drama, astronomy, etc. Actually, in Tibetan culture, all the knowledge taught in current higher education institutions can be encompassed. So afterward, we perhaps should, from multiple aspects, that the key is which aspect you're interested in. If you're interested in philosophy, then start from Tibetan culture's logic. Regarding logic, from India's Dignaga and Dharmakirti, transmitted all the way to Tibet. Tibetan logic is very flourishing. If you want to understand from other perspectives of art studies, including Tibetan Thangka, painting, poetry, all these have very great collection value. Also, there's value worth researching such a very sacred place. Therefore, now many people connect Tibetan culture with so-called xuan shui, or mysteriousness. Everyone feels this is very mysterious. Every movie or television program silently spinning prayer wheels represent a kind of symbol. Feeling in such a world, there are such simple and honest ethnic groups. It seems to feel very tranquil, elegant, comfortable. Such a feeling. But actually, are all Tibetan people happy and comfortable? Not necessarily. According to Buddhist doctrine, wherever ordinary sentient beings exist, karma and afflictions also continuously exist. If continuously existing, under the control of karma and afflictions, is there suffering? There is suffering. However, methods of facing suffering indeed do have differences, and suffering tormenting people's minds isn't forcing them to be so unbearably miserable. In this aspect, there are differences. Therefore, we very much need, at some times, on one hand now, to understand positively some profound principles of Tibetan Buddhism. At this time, I think today, first I want to tell everyone, actually, Tibetan culture is a kind of pluralistic culture. This point is very important. Then the second point, I want to tell everyone, the so-called Tibetan culture, it and Buddhist culture are completely connected together, such a culture. If separated from Dharma, separated from Buddhism, I'm afraid our Tibetan ethnic culture would be very difficult to research. No matter if you research any profession, any knowledge, from childhood, all are connected with Buddhism. Being connected with Buddhism, what's its main characteristic? Actually, Buddhism has become Tibetan culture's life. A while ago, when I was at National University of Singapore, a student asked, he said, "Why did you choose your religious faith to be Buddhism?" They asked me such a question. Then I said, when I came to this world, when I opened my eyes, actually my world was already a Buddhist world, so I had no other choice. On one hand, when I came to this world, when I opened my eyes, it was 1962. At that time, the famine had just ended. And at that time, democratic reform in Tibetan regions, many monasteries, including Buddhism, encountered especially great various kinds of turbulence. In such an environment and atmosphere, I came to this world. Although external society experienced such turbulence and unrest, but beside me, my neighbors, my family, these people around me, in such a storm, they still were able to maintain their own faith and their own views. So, in such an era, I didn't receive the slightest from other aspects, including slandering cause and effect, destroying Buddhism. At that time, outside, various sounds were heard, but for me personally, including those around me, at that time when I was very young, around me happening many, including my neighbors' families, very many stories of believing in Buddhism. Some old lamas, some old monastics in that era. Perhaps outside wearing monastic robes wasn't convenient, but inside they continuously symbolically wore many clothes. Outside, offering Buddha images wasn't very convenient, so outside they offered other images. At that time, images people relatively promoted, called their own deity images. Inside contained other Buddha images. At night, casting aside the outer veil, then starting to prostrate. I also, in a very complex, very crisis, having a sense of danger, such an environment, slowly grew up, but indeed also Growing up in our kind of era, as everyone also knows today, needless to say, Buddhist culture, except now in some big cities, already assimilated by other cultures, a very few individual minority besides, basically 99% all believe in Buddhism. I personally haven't encountered any Tibetan person who doesn't believe. Sometimes I see now, especially fashionable, some young people. I look at this person, surely doesn't acknowledge Buddhism. I deliberately interview them. Do you believe in Buddhism? Using other ethnic language, they say, I still believe because my dad and mom all believe in Buddhism, although in some language they may not necessarily be able to express. But in their minds, they're still Buddha. Besides such people, I heard a very few individual Tibetan people not only don't believe in Buddha, but even also have various kinds of statements. This is completely free, also acceptable. But this is what I myself personally haven't encountered. Why is it like this? I think today, we perhaps other content you've also heard relatively much. In that case, I think, why do Tibetan culture, Tibetan Buddhist views have such vitality? Today, perhaps listening to my nonsense may not have value, but I think most of you present are people from the normal university. After all, the normal university, most are teachers, people cultivating students. And students in the future will also be, like our normal universities there, 70–80% also cultivate students. Should be educating people, such talent. In that case, exactly why does Tibetan Buddhism or Tibetan culture in such various storms and turbulence of eras still continue until today? We perhaps should look at other supporting forces behind it. So today I'd like to discuss this. Discussing this involves a kind of strength of Tibetan culture. Why can a culture influence countries worldwide? Why does a culture attract so many people? Why does a culture have such a strong survival force? Behind this, there's surely a kind of force, not a kind of lifelike, appearing yet unreal, beautiful painting depicted by painters. Also not a poet using very beautiful, pleasant words to praise, a kind of illusory, textual appearance. It has certain causes and conditions. For example, there's a cypress tree, spring, summer, autumn, winter, all green. It has its own kind of growth force. It has its own kind of uncommon survival causes and conditions. So I myself thought I've also opened many culture history, including Tibetan and some related knowledge. At the same time, also with other ethnic groups, including Han Confucian thought, Taoist thought, as well as ancient cultures, sages, various theories and thoughts of the 100 schools. At this time, some cultures temporarily perhaps exist, finally self-arising, self-perishing. Some cultures indeed have extremely powerful attraction and continuously extending, for millions of years continuously surviving in the world. This has certain charm. Therefore, I think today, let's together look at such a kind of culture existing in Tibet. Many people perhaps go to Tibet to photograph our Tibet's, including local customs, life, as well as external environment, etc. These are a part of Tibetan culture. I don't consider it most important. Most important is actually its spiritual culture. Spiritual culture should be what people nowadays are worth exploring. And this kind of spirit is very beneficial for each person. In our real lives, especially in today's society, very turbulent and unstable, people's minds, emotions are very restless. Perhaps when material conditions are becoming more and more relatively abundant, our inner minds become more and more impoverished, more and more without security. Many people, no matter whom they meet, sigh, pressure is great, pressure is great. The other day at a school I said, we Tibetan people, it seems, haven't heard of pressure. Perhaps speaking of great pressure, no one can understand. What's called great pressure? Now still can't understand, but later perhaps will understand. A while ago at a school in Thailand, because there's a movie called Lost in Thailand, because of this, it attracted many enterprises. I went to Thailand 14 years ago. At that time, Thailand was a land of smiles, very good, very peaceful. But now tourists are becoming more and more numerous. Because of Lost in Thailand, now their economic development has improved somewhat. But people's minds, can be said to a considerable degree, are starting to have some afflictions. I said, I'm very worried there'll be a movie, Lost in Tibet. On the Tibetan side, at that time, perhaps various kinds of people will come to this land. Finally, all people's minds will be trampled. Originally, Tibetan people are a smiling ethnic group. Their life is very simple and honest. People's minds are also very kind. Everyone doesn't have excessive demands, just very happy. Because people living in the world, actually, we painstakingly accumulate wealth. Actually, it's also to survive for happiness. But it's not necessarily material abundance that can truly have meaning. So I say, today, let's use this time to discuss with everyone, why does Tibetan culture have such vitality? I feel behind it, there's a kind of relatively special force. This special force, in our Tibet, there's something called the 16 maxims of human beings. This is from Tibetan King Songtsen Gampo. It's over 300 years from now. At this time, for the entire Tibetan people, a kind of law can also be said to be a kind of human being standard, maxims. So I think today, let's together look. I've retranslated these 16 maxims. Over 300 years ago, their rules for being human, the requirements for Tibetan people were like this. After over 300 years have passed, today, with our 21st century eyes, looking back or tracing back over 1,000 years of history, let's see what feelings we have. At that time, regarding people's moral standards, what kind of thoughts did they have? The other day in America, many schools are also researching. King Trisongdetsen and Padmasambhava at that time, and also the Dakini Yeshe Tsogyal, their lives, including Harvard University, Columbia University, they're all researching. I went to listen to their classes. I felt it's very interesting because as Westerners, from Westerners' perspective, looking at Tibet at that time, how did they live? Their cultural background and their methods of facing suffering, what were they like? The teacher discusses one by one, students each discuss their own feelings. So I think today we also, at that time, King Songtsen Gampo established Jokang Temple and Ramosh Temple and the entire Tibetan region. He was the 33rd Tibetan king. At that time, some of his requirements, let's compare them with today. Why does everyone like to go to Tibet? Using cameras to photograph, sometimes you may not necessarily capture Tibetan people's inner minds. I very much hope if you go to Tibet, it's not Tibet's monasteries, prayer wheels, spinning, how fast. You can photograph these too, but most important is their inner world. What's in their inner world? It's the Tibetan canon, it's treatises, and also treatises composed by Tibetan great masters. This is very important. I see at the normal university, there are also many lamas, geshes, khenpos, previously also studying, now also studying at various higher institutions. This is very good. They also study other ethnic groups' knowledge. You should also study. Taiwan has many rinpoches and gurus. Their very profound wisdom you should study. This is very important. Taking photos together is also fine. You can photograph. But no matter how high your camera's pixels, you may not necessarily capture the inner mind. So what's in the inner mind? Many of them can be said, perhaps they're ordinary people, nothing special. I dare not say they're truly noble ones, but as ordinary people, also in a certain educational environment, cultivated for how many years? Because Tibetan monasteries and schools are the same entity, from childhood, continuously cultivated in such Buddhist culture. Finally, indeed, there is that kind of much knowledge making the inner mind tranquil. If we obtain it, this is truly Tibetan culture, Tibetan Buddhism. So I think some appearances, now many people especially cling to forms, you know. In Tibet, there's some singing, dancing. Some people like to photograph these. You can photograph these too. But most important is see what kind of attraction is in their inner minds. Why can they maintain until today, also having a certain preparation for happiness in this life and next lives? When facing suffering, I've been to some disaster areas in Tibet, including the Yushu earthquake. At that time, truly, it was different. In such great disasters, earth-shattering sufferings, they still smile in face calmly. behind this, surely there's a kind of historical reason, surely a reason of their knowledge. So today, let's look at that time, Songtsen Gampo as Tibetan people, except very few individuals. Basically, he's a household name, everyone understands. But many other compatriots, I also asked some individuals, they've studied Tibetan culture and Tibetan Buddhism for many years, but the 16 maxims of human beings, up until now, some still don't know. I said, very regrettable. So suddenly I had a thought. Today here, with teachers and students, briefly make a literal explanation. It has slightly more value than some of my frivolous talk. So I think, first, there are 16 maxims. At that time, Songtsen Gampo, for all Tibetan people, had this. First, the 10 virtues. The 10 virtues in Buddhist scriptures, there's the Sutra of the 10 Good Karmas path. Then the 16 maxims of human beings. The 16 maxims of human beings were actually established by the Tibetan king at that time. What he established at that time was for Tibetan people, but other ethnic groups, other people. Can they accept it? In our lives, does it have use? Let's still look together. The first maxim, revere and believe in the 3 jewels. That is to say, take refuge in the 3 jewels, revere the 3 jewels. It discusses faith. Actually, at that time, indeed, 100% of Tibet believed in Buddhism. Now, speaking of Taiwan, actually there are also different reports, but it's also said about 8 million people are Buddhists. Therefore, truly, actually, this was counted. If not counted, should also be even more. Moreover, here, everyone very much promotes faith, such a place. At such times, actually, for me personally, from childhood, all in our Tibet, we don't need taking refuge like now. Don't need, there's no such concept. Because from childhood, after all, you're a Buddhist. You don't need to apply for a refuge certificate again, sign for you again, give you a Dharma name. There's none of this. From childhood, your faith has all been like this, so there's nothing. But actually, indeed, believing in the 3 jewels is very important. If you go study other religions, there's also nothing wrong. Very good. But indeed, if you yourself have wisdom, all capacities are complete. It's best to look at the Chinese Buddhist canon. Related, how have all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas described our current world? Matters before life, current matters, matters after death. Humans aren't like what some current atheists acknowledge. Humans are just a kind of product in brief time. Now such wrong views fill the sky. Very pitiful. In this world, one should have a very devout faith. This is most rare in our lives. Yesterday, some people also said, the most fortunate thing in my life is encountering the Dharma, especially encountering Vajrayana teachings. I also often say this from the bottom of my heart. Coming to this world, any success for my values is all unimportant. Of course, not necessarily the same as me and some Buddhists. If you have no faith, it's also acceptable. But without faith, there's no bottom line of behavior, no true support for one's own thoughts, no destination. At the time of death, you'll only discover, oh, originally, actually having no faith isn't necessarily highest. In some current individual countries, what's the whole world like? Everyone can look. So the first is requiring everyone to revere and believe in the 3 jewels. Taking refuge in the 3 jewels, having faith in the 3 jewels has very great benefit. Therefore, I hope some students, your young people, perhaps at the beginning, you yourself think faith is some elderly people. It's their kind of behavior. Young people like me, it seems now haven't yet reached such, not necessarily like this, some valuable things in life. When young, perhaps you may not necessarily see very accurately. If you feel that is most meaningful in your life, when you reach old age, looking back, originally, actually, this wasn't important. Another thing was very important. You'll have such thoughts. This is the first. The second maxim, seek to practice right Dharma. This is very important. Just taking refuge alone won't work. We must have a kind of seeking aspiration, like some great masters in Tibet, risking casting aside life's danger, going to India, going to some other places, overcoming all difficulties, diligently studying, first relying on gurus, spiritual friends, then truly seeking right Dharma. Now some Buddhists just take a refuge, hear an empowerment, or attend a Dharma assembly, and it's enough. actually this won't work. True Dharma is actually in our books. True teachings are right there. So Dharma, what is refuge? What is generating bodhicitta? What is liberating sentient beings? What are life's values? All these you must through long-term research and study. If you don't research and study, then just a superficial faith. Very easy to change. Others say Buddhism isn't very good because you have no firm view at that time. Very quickly it'll change. So I especially hope must have, just like Tibet's spirit of seeking learning. Now, in Chinese Buddhism also, many people slightly understand listen, contemplating, practicing. Actually, listen, contemplating, practicing, we especially emphasize. Including teachers and university students, you can use a kind of academic perspective to research. Now, many universities especially have Chan study societies, research societies, and also some teaching research offices. Through such methods to research, if you're a believer, then you should truly systematically study. I heard many Rinpoches teach Madhyamaka, teach logic. This is very good. Previously in Taiwan, basically never heard of this. Now some are teaching. This is Tibetan Buddhism's true inner thought. If you slowly study at a certain time, indeed you'll know how important this is for life. This isn't just us verbally advertising to you. No, we don't need to. Truth in any era, any ethnic group, any place, its radiance continuously manifests. So anyone also has no way to make false advertising. Anyone also has no way to deliberately slander, conceal, or cover it. Just like gold buried underground, its golden light in the sky can also manifest. So this is truth's kind of expression. Therefore, I think everyone should study right Dharma. This is very important. The third maxim is called filial culture, filial piety to parents. Now, many young people, perhaps regarding care for parents, Taiwan here, I'm not especially clear. Actually, on the mainland side, because many are only children, some with a bit of filial piety concept hire a nanny to help parents. But actually, they themselves are continuously busy outside doing business. Some people fundamentally have no conscience, especially like Western countries, after parents are old, fundamentally don't care for them. Very pitiful. Now, those with money, those without money, moreover, parents at that time, mood is especially fragile. One sentence, if you speak inappropriately, parents become sad. Tibetan people have a saying, mother's heart is like water, child's heart is like stone. Mother's heart is very fragile, like water. Child's heart is like stone, very hard, doesn't matter. Although Han regions previously promoted filial culture, for example, classic of filial piety, disciple rules, in all these already promoted being filial to one's parents, but in the current era, many people in schools don't promote. Because in schools, now many teachers and students, what do they study? Geometry, electronics, this and that, study, study, study. Truly, in daily life, much knowledge can't be used. Toward parents, if you want to use much technological knowledge, perhaps parents now don't need this. Parents very much need children's kind of filial piety toward them. But actually now but Tibet is different. Now I also see many, perhaps compared with other ethnic groups, there's a certain difference. No matter if family conditions are good or not, but everyone, when parents are old, must, before their death, let them be happy, peaceful. Basically, don't let them experience suffering. Let them properly recite Buddha's name. Let them eat well, dress well. There, this life and next lives, everyone will consider. A very few individual unfilial people now in Tibet also exist. This any place has, but from the majority over thousands of years of culture, now in folk life, in filial culture. I think many other ethnic groups and countries, I'm afraid, indeed also can't compare with Tibetan people. Tibetan people, no matter what, their own economic conditions are poor, work is busy. No matter what, put parents first. This is a kind of filial culture, so being filial to parents is actually very important. The fourth maxim, respect the virtuous. What does respect the virtuous mean? At that time, Tibetan King Songtsen Gampo also required our values should be respecting, revering people with virtue. People of high virtue and prestige, people with both virtue and talent. Such people are worth our respect. For example, a Buddhist, there are 3 trainings of precepts, concentration, wisdom, or a worldly person, their wisdom, virtue, etc., very lofty. Such people, we should revere them, promote them, respect them. But besides this, some illusory, insubstantial, externally packaged very well, but internally having no merit, learning, or knowledge. For such, not necessarily deliberately exaggerate. So at such times, actually indeed, we very much promote merit and virtue. This kind of knowledge viewpoint, Tibet has a saying, even if dying tomorrow, today also should study knowledge. Although in this life can't use, but next life, like stored wealth, oneself can enjoy. So any person of virtue, everyone respects. This is very important now. Now many people, now perhaps it's not an era of promoting or respecting people of virtue. Of course, among celebrities, some care about people's livelihood. There are also many such virtuous people, but some celebrities, they just manage eating, drinking, playing, or their skin is made relatively special. His fans, star chasers, are especially many. Everyone especially promotes this. This era, if everyone follows him, will everyone become singing stars, sports stars, celebrities? Also, very hard to say. Perhaps oneself fundamentally can't sing people, especially like singing celebrities. Fundamentally can't dance people, especially like something or other. Fundamentally can't act in movies, people especially like acting in movies. For them can give up one's everything, even dying is acceptable. Such phenomena, now society has become like this. But actually, this isn't necessarily so. So our promotion of knowledge is very important. Like previously, Cambodia seems between 1975 to 1979. All intellectuals had to be killed. Originally, this ethnic group, about 7 million people. In brief 4 or 5 years, the Khmer Rouge government promoted all knowledgeable people, all had to be killed. There's a mass grave. Perhaps many of you have been. 10,000 people buried there, now discovered. About in 24 provinces and cities, all have such. If we encounter such, truly very scary. Our era isn't like this. Everyone also knows. Overall, toward wise ones, still relatively respectful. But speaking of Tibet, whether worldly Dharma or transcendent Dharma, toward truly virtuous people, very much promote, very much respect such a place. So everyone should also be like this. We should also, whether students or teachers, whoever has knowledge, should revere them or respect them. This is very important. The fifth, treat elders courteously. This is very important. What does this mean? It means in the world, actually, we need toward our own elders. For example, among relatives and friends, of course, teachers as well, and also including older brothers, elder siblings, all should respect. This is a civilized attitude. This is very important. In some eras, not placing superiors in one's eyes, this is especially terrible. Students not respecting teachers, children not respecting elders. Actually, this is unreasonable. Now, people's learning and some knowledge aren't necessarily low. Perhaps your elder is illiterate, knowledge level isn't very high person. But their entire life experience and experience wisdom far exceed ours. If we listen to their words, should be said, let oneself in life take fewer detours. Now, many young people fundamentally have no concept. It seems toward these elderly, they're disdainful. You old muddleheads understand what? What are you saying? You can't say. Now we in this era, we are like this and that. Such talk indeed is also unreasonable. Therefore, each person should toward their own seniors in knowledge, status, learning. Some people don't understand respecting superiors and caring for juniors, including one's own superiors, by reason toward your leaders, your teachers, management personnel above you. You should learn to respect, learn to revere, but some people won't respect. In their presence, it seems eyes hold no one, very arrogant. As a result, your superior doesn't deal with you. Even one sentence can dismiss you, very easy. At that time, you yourself are very suffering. Also no way. Now many people haven't learned how to be human. should be said, in receiving people, handling affairs, dealing with world concepts, many schools don't have this. So I especially hope some normal universities, other teachers, often, whether extracurricular or in class, teach more about how to be a good person. Many children from childhood just play on computers, continuously playing until the end. When truly at work, in family, computers also can't be used. At that time, quarreling with everyone, crying bitterly, even choosing suicide, it's such an era. So, in the current era, on the surface it looks colorful, seems to have progress, but actually the inner mind is very afflicted, very restless, a very suffering era. So such behavior is needed. The sixth, benefit and aid neighbors and villages. That is to say, help our neighbors. Actually, this is also very important as a person with one's own neighbors, own friends, colleagues, all have certain affinities, karmic connection. If you don't have good relations with them, I observe people now. Many people indeed have bad relations with neighbors, even now because many people live in high rises. When opening doors, they just look at each other, seeming especially hateful. Previously, people weren't like this. When going out, mutually looking once, moreover, mutually having a kind of fear, can't socialize with you. If socializing, afraid the other enters your home. In that case afterward, now all have a kind of defensive feeling. All feel, this person best not come to my home. Previously, it wasn't like this. Previously, everyone, you're my neighbor. We're very connected. We need to help. In previous eras, this existed. Sometimes distant relatives aren't as good as near neighbors. There's such a saying. When truly at home, appearing some sick people, some matters. Distant relatives may not come in time. They still need to take flights, still need to, the person beside you, if you often help others, the person at your side, they would help you. Previously, there was a story, there was a restaurant. They especially helped surrounding beggars. When others all sneered at them, their family often helped. As a result, once a fire appeared, surrounding houses were all completely burned down. But their home, all the beggars came over to help them. Things inside also all moved out. A group of beggars had already saved their home because they often loved helping beggars. Usually, people beside them all often disliked this group of beggars. But later, indeed, their home was saved. So sometimes toward colleagues, toward people at our side, now many people build relationships. I feel the king at that time still spoke very accurately. Now many social problems, we say, are interpersonal problems. These problems in that year, over 300 years ago, were already spoken thoroughly, should be very necessary. Everyone should also look. Don't be especially indifferent. I see in current society, not like before, between people, there's no sense of trust. Between people, there's a kind of repulsion, completely a state of ignoring, in that case, not necessarily very good. So this discusses the sixth maxim. The seventh maxim, speak straightforwardly, yet cautiously. Speaking straightforwardly, yet cautiously, in our speaking process actually, on one hand, don't beat around the bush. Now, many people especially love frivolous talk. Sometimes I don't dare to listen to others. After listening, is it true or false? So now there's a kind of catchphrase. When others speak, all say true or false, true or false. I don't know about Taiwan there. Every day people say true or false. Already finished speaking, you still need to ask again, true or false? If it's false, what use is it for me to tell you? You hear say that too, right? Han regions, many people say, true or false, true or false. So speaking, on one hand indeed, people should have upright language. What should be said? Some language, no need to ask others much, true or false. You just directly, everyone speaks very truthfully. In the letter to a friend, it says truthful speech, sweet speech, distorted speech. There are three kinds of speech classification. Analyzed. Of course, when speaking, everyone should also be cautious. We Tibetans have a saying, speak a sentence, look at the present people's faces. The meaning is, when you speak, you need a technique. Don't use one sentence to offend this or that one. This isn't very good. Speaking should be cautious. We usually also often say, disaster comes from the mouth, illness enters from the mouth. So generally, disasters come out from your speech. Some people, with one sentence, offend people at the scene. So sometimes when we speak, if I speak of others' faults. For example, if I want to talk, a certain religion is not good. I first look around me. Are there people of this religion? If I want to talk about a person, such and such culture is not good. I look around. Are there any? I see many people now don't know how to speak. How don't they know? For example, there are 10 people at one dining table. When speaking, clearly seeing what this person speaks, at minimum, offends a large pile of people there. But they themselves seem to feel, I speak very directly. I'm very straightforward. They directly say it out. After directly saying it out, seeing everyone's expressions are all bad. Originally, these were delicious delicacies. As a result, with their one sentence, everyone's appetite is all bad. There are such situations. So, speaking should be cautious. This also is, in the current era, very important. The 8th is, treat relatives and friends generously, with deep and lasting affection. This is also very important. Now, our many relatives and friends. Relationships are sometimes good, sometimes bad. Today is good, tomorrow isn't good. People's hearts change especially fast. Don't even mention relatives and friends. Perhaps today marry, tomorrow divorce. A while ago during National Day, today marry, tomorrow live together, day after divorce. There are 3-day ones. Some news outlets also reports this. So relationships between people now have already become like this. At this time, we should think, actually, people are together, whether family or friends. Any relationship still has certain karmic connection. If there's karmic connection, you might already be in a teacher-student relationship, or mutually colleagues or friends. Your such affection deep and lasting and continuous. This is very important. My guru, Wish-Fulfilling Jewel, also very emphasized this point. Yesterday, when I came to Taiwan, at that time, when inviting the Dharma King, some Buddhist followers are here. I asked them one by one. Many of them are still studying now. This shows it's their kind of faith, a manifestation of deep and lasting affection. Relationships between people, sometimes, now many, including on your phone, you can see, at the beginning, it is very affectionate. Mutually exchange phones, exchange business cards. After 2 more months, 2 more years, all these aren't used. It seems your relationship has gone bad. You need to completely end those connections, one by one. Even some put on blacklist. In that case, affection isn't deep and lasting. Songtsen Gampo, at that time, required us, 21st century people, first you'd best not truly, with very many people, have relatives and friends relationships. Once you have them, this is a karmic connection. You should cherish this karmic connection without special circumstances. Today, especially passionate, so hot perhaps mutually it will burn. Tomorrow, especially cold, so cold immediately it become ice. Such relationships also aren't necessarily very suitable, so should think of deep and lasting affection. This is very important. The 9th is follow the noble, look far ahead. This is also very important. Now, many people, perhaps in this society, what everyone seeks is money, status, very simple kind of life, and many people don't have higher ideals, including some art, philosophy, religion, also caring about one's own next life, etc. Now, many people are short-sighted, can be said to have mouse-like vision, don't have many far-reaching goals, far-reaching thoughts. As long as muddle through, finish living life, that's enough. My present, this lifetime is enough. Don't have many requirements. This is also very unreasonable. This is the 9th. The 10th is eat moderately, earn wealth properly. Our eating, using wealth, all should have a kind of restraint, should economize. The noble person loves wealth, obtains it through proper means. There's such a saying, right? I heard here, extravagant waste is also relatively severe. That is to say, if all the waste from last year were added up, it would amount to the living expenses of 260,000 low-income people over 20 years. So if we continue like this now, perhaps we will lose merit. That's not very reasonable. These wealth we ourselves use should not be waste, even any food. This is very important. This is the 10th maxim. The 11th maxim is trace back old kindness, know gratitude, and repay well. This is very important. Now, many people toward those who previously had kindness to oneself won't repay kindness, won't know gratitude. Actually, people not necessarily in a lifetime can repay all kindness, but at least you also know gratitude. Even if you cannot repay their kindness, you verbally say, when I was most difficult, most suffering, you helped me, especially thank you, saying such a sentence. Indeed, there's a kind of warmth in the heart in the cold winter. This is very important because some people perhaps in their minds think this person had kindness to me, but verbally they can't say it out. Now, some people are relatively reserved. When should be embarrassed, not embarrassed. When shouldn't be embarrassed, seems embarrassed to say. Forget it. This person originally was all very good to me. When I was in difficulty, helped me, but I won't say. They have mind reading. They should know that themselves. But others also don't know. Others think, originally I helped them. Now they don't even have one sentence of gratitude, not even 2 words, thank you. So sometimes I feel people indeed need to give others a kind of gratitude. Being able to repay old kindness is very important. For example, some teachers, now when you're successful, originally when you were young, some teachers taught you books, knowledge. They had kindness to you, and you should specially make a trip to visit them if you don't have any wealth to give, even just 1 flower there. This is an expression of my heart, nothing else. I just picked up a flower on the road. Today, I present it to you, teacher, how I was back then. Especially at that time, the teacher perhaps is old, their heart is very happy. So sometimes our grateful heart, gratitude culture are very much promoted and important in Tibetan culture. The 12th is repay debts timely, scales and measures without deceit. This is also business culture, enterprise culture. In the world, it's called borrow well, return well. Borrow again, not difficult. There's such a saying, right? Now, many people like to borrow money, but finally, fundamentally, they don't repay. Then what happens? Finally, it all need to go to court. In that case, this is called robbery in Buddhism. After you borrow, never repay again. Such behavior indeed is not good. If you borrow any wealth, then you should pay back immediately when you have. Now, many young people fundamentally don't understand. After borrowing, it's finished. Oneself, even if they have ability to repay, don't return. In that case, it is unreasonable. Even if you truly have no ability to repay, you should at least verbally state, I now temporarily have some difficulty. Recently, I've continuously been striving. Please wait. After a period of time, I'll definitely return to you. You continuously give them comfort. This is also very necessary. This is also a very important matter. Moreover, now in transaction processes, there are many short weighing behaviors. Originally, any transaction, all was through very proper, reasonable means to transact. We rely on conscience and rely on trust, rely on integrity, establish trust to transact. This is very important. The 13th is eliminate jealousy. Everyone knows in entire human history, including what happened in some imperial palaces, many major events are caused by jealousy. If jealousy is strong on the surface, it seems it's a mentality. But actually, under jealousy's driving, relationships between people are extremely terrifying in every aspect. Jealousy, perhaps when jealousy is strong, it's very easily to go down an unwise road. Your behavior will let many people also produce incomparable suffering. So jealousy is different from all afflictive mental states. Especially some females. I discover females generally in Buddhist scriptures also speak like this. Men's mentality is slightly more peaceful, while females are very sensitive. Slightly, others making phone calls, others speaking immediately. And females especially are particularly prone to misunderstandings. This misunderstanding, that misunderstanding. With their own family, with other colleagues. Their discriminating thoughts are relatively detailed, relatively many. Men's afflictions still exist. Ordinary people all have, but especially females. I'm not slandering females, not disrespecting. There's no such thing. In Vajrayana's 14 root precepts, because practitioners also cannot specially slander females. Otherwise, it would violate Vajrayana root precepts. So I don't do that, but honestly, if we objectively judge, some females still have some differences from males. At this time, we must pay attention to this jealousy. Jealousy is very easily to arise. Jealousy's nature and jealousy's function, everyone should also understand. The 14th is, don't listen to false doctrines, maintain one's own views. This is very important because in society, there are often some dishonest means, all kinds, so-called heresy in Buddhism, not saying heresy outside Buddhism, but they are all sects unsuitable to truth. All these are called heresy. We don't need to listen to what some of them say. We should have one's own views. Don't follow others' words. People should have a kind of one's own views to uphold. When people have no views, everything simply go with the flow, just continuously following others. In that case, previously also, looking at human history, many behaviors were caused by this. So now people must have views in this society, especially some Buddhists. You yourself definitely should have your own views, your own lineage, and know what your own guru is like. You first earnestly, seriously study for a period of time. Don't casually listen to others, some false doctrines. Others, some false doctrines, actually have various purposes. I previously also wrote Dispelling the Wrong Views, in which I specially discussed this. Actually, in this society, some things are fundamentally nothing worth mentioning now, but there are others, some people with ulterior motives. When they resort to heresy, they also will exhibit various behaviors. At this time, as Buddhists, you should have own views. As an intellectual, you also should have your own kind of individuality. At this time, if someone is easily swayed by the slightest disturbance, then this person isn't truly a kind of symbol of wisdom. So here, we also have to admit, at a certain time, people should maintain their own right view. Buddhism especially emphasizes on right view and definite opinion. Without this definite opinion, studying Buddhism also cannot succeed because your faith and behavior are all not firm. It's just like a building on water, especially unstable. Today, person said this, and then they followed him there. Tomorrow, person said that, and they followed him again. In that case, it's unreasonable. Should be up oneself to decide. When our wish-fulfilling jewel was approaching parinirvana, he said 2 sentences. These 2 sentences only contain 8 characters. He said, do not lose your own path, do not disturb others' minds. This sentence is very important. As a Buddhist, your Buddhist's own path, don't lose abandon, also don't disturb others. As our Rinpoche's disciples all treat it as a life motto, a life goal. In life, any matter. Since I've chosen this task, I cannot just waver about it. Now some people, such as some guru's disciples, today they are very good with guru. Then after 2 days, others say, this isn't good. Right, not good. Today say, this isn't good either. Right, that also not good. Especially easy to change. This shows people themselves has no definite opinion. If you have definite opinion, that simple words alone carries no weight to you. For example, like me, I have unwavering definite opinion in the teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha. To be honest, I myself often from the bottom of my heart say, even if really someone kills me or cuts me, when an ordinary person's feel extremely suffering, it's hard to say. Besides this, my faith in Buddha won't change. Anyone tells me how much because I myself in early years, through over 20 years of dedicated study, finally I myself found definite opinion. This kind of definite opinion isn't the result of brainwashing by others. This isn't something I was given temporarily by others. So our Buddhism or other intellectuals among you, people should have own views. People should have own kind of mind. Don't every day follow behind others, changing all the time, turning here and there. At such times, actually, Buddhists, some people also are often like this, so I find it intolerable. No good. Look below says, warm words speak little. I should speak more gently, and speak less cannot speak very much. Just now I spoke a bit much. These two neither done well. Our speech cannot be too blunt, cannot say some violent language. We often say, least said, soonest mended. After speaking much, we'll have many mistakes. Also often say words spoken improperly like a sharp blade's tip. It means that if you're not careful, verbally speaking many bad words, you will offend many people. One sentence can make others jump up. One sentence can make others laugh. One sentence can also make others cry. One sentence can also make others' hearts unhappy. Will die. Such exists. Previously, there was a story. There were two people. One person asked, "Do you like me?" The other person said, "I don't like you." Is it true? True. Then wait a moment. It's said that person later passed away. So worldly people, one sentence perhaps is true, perhaps not true. A worldly true news, but these few words I don't like were enough made one person die. So our speech definitely should pay attention. Sometimes cannot be too rough. The Buddha in Buddha's words, "I have 2 minutes left." The Buddha in Buddha's words, for example, in the 10 virtues. Bodily non-virtuous karma has 3. Mind non-virtuous karma has 3. Verbal non-virtuous karma has 4. Not speaking falsely, not speaking frivolously, not speaking divisively, not speaking harshly. In that case, shows our speech is still very important. Everyone in speaking process, indeed without special necessity, it is better to speak less. I also will speak a bit less. Below, the 16th, shoulder great responsibility, be magnanimous. This is Songtsen Gampo's last sentence. That is to say, we people should shoulder great responsibility, should do some meaningful things. Talented people are very important, and mentality should be magnanimous, cannot haggle over small matters. Now many people quarrel. Wars and struggles between people are triggered by small matters. Many family wars, all are quarrels over small matters. If it's big matters causing war, cold wars, hot wars are all not very many. So especially, I hope everyone should do some beneficial things. Whether one's own ethnic group or society, beneficial ones, shouldering great responsibility is very important. Moreover, usually in life, the mind should be broad. In our Tibet, indeed many people, perhaps it's the grassland's blue sky, this environment has affected people. Many people all are relatively magnanimous in heart, relatively honest, not over tiny matters, all day quarreling. Won't be like this, so especially hope everyone should enter a world of broad mind. At this time, you are happy, others are happy too. What is the most important for us in our daily lives? One is one's own mind, should recognize one's own mind's nature. Simultaneously, should do one's best to begin benefiting the multitude. This is the most ultimate meaning of this culture we're truly seeking today. Good, thank you everyone.